Well, being Mother's Day, I've invited Berny Kirwan to offer us a reflection on the role of mother.
My name is Berny Kirwan. I have worked at the parish for 20 years in various roles, and I'm currently the Parish Pastoral Manager. I grew up in Manningtree Road, just a short walk from here. I was baptised in this church. I went to the Manresa Kindergarten and to St Joseph's Primary School when it was located on Power Street. Chris and I were married at St Joseph's Church almost 42 years ago. We have 5 children and 2 grandchildren. They are our reason for being. I'm aware that Mother's Day can be a hard day for some of us. I know there are women who aren't mothers, some by choice, some by circumstance. There are those whose relationship with their mother may not have been the best. Then there are those of us whose mothers are no longer here, as in my case. Being a mother is an incredibly daunting job. Pregnancy and childbirth is not for the faint-hearted. Every child is precious. The first time I held each of my newly born babies, I felt in awe of them. How privileged was I to be their mother? I remember getting ready to leave the hospital with my first child and looking around at the nurses and wondering if I could bring one of them home with me, because surely I wasn't capable enough to look after this precious little being. Motherhood brings many sleepless nights, from newborn babies needing feeds to when they're a bit older and the usual minor colds and sniffles keep them and you awake. And at times when they need to share your bed, which we all know doesn't really end up with anyone getting any sleep. We often had the bedtime problem that our children just didn't want to go to sleep. I look back on this time and have realised I spent a lot of time trying to get children to go to sleep, when it was I that really needed and wanted to go to sleep, or to just have a minute to myself, to just sit and be me for a small portion of my day. Mothers need to know how to treat the many cuts and bruises that can occur in childhood. Is it a kiss-it-better wound, need a Band-Aid cut, or a need a trip to the emergency department situation? When you are a mother, there are everyday events that need to be managed, such as how to placate a child when you have cut their sandwich into squares when they ask for triangles, or when you haven't evenly shared out the ice cream or the chocolate, and then comes the well-known lament of, "They got more than me." It has occurred to me that I've seldom heard that said in regard to vegetables. One of my greatest joys as a mother has been able to play and spend time with my children. I loved drawing and reading and puzzles and cuddles and laughter. There is nothing more delightful than hearing a child's unbridled merriment, the feel of their little hands in yours and their beautiful sloppy kisses. I knew my life was changing when I was crossing a busy road with one of my sons a few years ago, who is now in his late 30s, and I went to hold his hand as we crossed the road. In my mind, this was for his benefit. He thought I was indicating that I needed his assistance. I look back on these early years with many wonderful memories. A cliche, I know, but they were truly some of the hardest but happiest years of my life. Having grandchildren has brought back for me how all-consuming babies and young children are. You do forget very quickly how much hard work it is. Being a mother is never easy, and each generation has different challenges. I have a precious black and white photograph of my mother when she was 18 months old, being held by my grandmother and flanked by my great-grandmother and great-great-grandmother. I often ponder these grandmothers of mine and contemplate how different each of their experiences of motherhood must have been, managing through wars, the Great Depression, and not having the many so-called labour-saving devices that we have today. My mother and Chris's mother were my main role models when I had my own children. They both had 6 children each. My mother was very practical. I wouldn't have said organised, but I never remember being late for anything with Mum. How she managed to get us all dressed and ready for school and mass, I truly don't know. I conceded defeat by the time I got to my 5th child, and I was resigned to the fact I would never be on time again. All it would take would be one child to misplace something, or one to decide they really didn't want to go wherever we were going, and one to suddenly need a change of clothes and we were walking out the door. My mother was not a great cook. Chris's mother was and still is. The recipes she shared with me when I was first married are still family favourites. I know that my grandmother and mother were very religious. Their understanding of life was greatly influenced by their faith. My mother's favourite prayer was the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. It surprises me how often this prayer comes to my mind when circumstances are difficult or I am troubled. Knowing that my mother also found this prayer so helpful brings me great comfort. Life can be hard. I'm sure I'm not alone when I admit to the tendency to blame myself for my children's struggles. As a mother, it is hard to watch your children when they are experiencing difficult times. Just wanting them to feel supported and loved and to know that we are still here for them when they need us. A tenet of Ignatian spirituality is finding God in all things, to look at everyday life and see where God is, to see where the love is. I often ask myself, so where is God in all of this? I do believe that God's grace has always been with me and with my family, even when things have initially seemed pretty God-forsaken. I only need to look at my children and my grandchildren and to remember the love of my mother and father to know where God is. My children have taught me many things and expanded my capacity for love, patience and compassion. I have been honoured to walk with them through the years. As I have said, they are my reason for being. My hope for you and your families is that you can find God's love in your everyday lives, especially at the times when you need God's loving presence the most, and that you manage to get a minute to yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernie.